Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're tackling a massive, totally fascinating paradox of the human mind, the surprisingly close relationship between high intelligence and, well, forgetting everyday things. If you're the kind of person who just loves to learn, but constantly finds yourself blanking on the most obvious everyday details, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to unpack the cognitive architecture behind why your brain actually does this, and trust me, it is entirely by design.
Let's just be honest for a second. How many times this week, literally this week, have you asked yourself, wait, where did I just put my keys? Or maybe way worse, what was their name again? Exactly 5 seconds after someone introduced themselves, leaving you to just awkwardly call them buddy or man for the next 3 years. It's incredibly frustrating, right? It causes anxiety, and you might even secretly worry that your memory is failing or that there's something genuinely wrong with your brain. We constantly beat ourselves up over losing items or blanking on a name we literally just heard.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, the myth of bad memory and why you aren't actually losing your mind.
You know, society absolutely loves to label this kind of stuff. People probably joke that you've got a terrible memory, or they call you scattered or absent-minded. But look at the psychological reality here. Cognitive psychology actually reveals that this is a powerful indicator of a highly intelligent, deeply processing brain. Your brain simply organizes information differently than the average person. You aren't scattered at all, you're just processing at a depth that requires massive cognitive resources.
Moving into Section 2, why names slip away, or what we call the arbitrary label phenomenon.
So, in cognitive psychology, names are basically seen as arbitrary labels. This means they're just surface-level details that usually lack any deep intrinsic meaning, practical knowledge, or real emotional connection. So, the absolute crucial point here is that a highly intelligent brain is literally wired to prefer deep connections. Because a random name doesn't immediately attach to profound knowledge or a deeper emotional truth, your brain basically views it as unimportant and just throws it right out. It's not failing to remember, it's actively choosing not to store it.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark difference in how two different minds handle the exact same introduction. The average brain hears a name and bam, it remembers a word. It's a very shallow, one-to-one retention. But the highly intelligent brain, it tosses out the random name because it is entirely preoccupied with analyzing the person's energy, their personality, and their story. You might forget what they're called for sure, but you will perfectly remember the exact energy they brought into the room and all those little nuances of their character.
Which brings us to Section 3, the cognitive overload effect, and the heavy burden of a highly active mind. What you're actually experiencing in those frustrating moments is a thing called cognitive overload. Basically, this is a state where your mind is running multiple, incredibly complex thoughts all at the exact same time. When your brain is heavily engaged in these complex, overlapping streams of thought, the memory encoding process for simple, everyday details becomes significantly weaker. I want to assure you right now, your brain isn't failing. No way. It's just doing way too much heavy lifting all at once to bother recording where you put down your coffee mug.
Just think about everything that's actively competing for your attention during a standard, simple introduction. When someone says hello, your mind is almost never focused only on their name. Nope, you're simultaneously analyzing what you should say next, you're reading their microexpressions and body language, you're processing the layout of the entire room, all while running a super deep internal monologue. The obvious information slips away simply because your attention is totally occupied by these massive cognitive demands.
Let's move to Section 4, the power of associative integration and why tiny details somehow stick forever. So why can you remember a passing comment from 3 years ago with crystal clarity, but not yesterday's lunch? It really comes down to a powerful cognitive trait known as associative integration. Deep thinkers have this brilliant knack for linking concepts from completely different, seemingly unrelated areas and merging them together to form entirely new insights. Your brain basically acts like a massive engine for strong pattern recognition and predictive processing. It isn't just randomly recording memories, it's constantly trying to make sense of the world by hunting for logical connections. Let's break down and see how this builds in real time. Step 1, you pick up on a tiny detail. Maybe it's a passing comment or a very specific tone of voice. Step 2, your brain instantly kicks into pattern recognition mode, connecting this current behavior to past behaviors. Step 3, it forms a deeper truth or insight about that person or situation. Your brain treats these tiny, hyperspecific details as crucial puzzle pieces of logically meaningful data. And that is exactly why they stick with you forever, because they actually mean something to the larger picture.
All right, Section 5, selective organization in action, or the actual method to the physical madness.
This whole process is called selective organization. The thing is, highly intelligent minds simply do not organize absolutely everything equally. They just don't. Instead, your brain actively pours its valuable cognitive energy into what truly matters to you, and it completely ignores what doesn't. It's essentially an evolutionary survival mechanism for your intellect. It ruthlessly prioritizes depth over surface-level clutter. I love this because it perfectly validates those seemingly messy habits you might be a little self-conscious about. Look at the physical world. Sure, you might have a chaotic desk, forget a date, or totally misplace those keys. But then, look at your internal world. Your complex ideas, your creative systems, your internal digital files, they are perfectly, beautifully structured. The extreme order and mental efficiency are happening entirely behind the scenes, right where it actually counts.
Finally, Section 6, your brilliant, efficient mind. Let's reframe forgetfulness as your greatest strength.
I really want you to internalize this powerful truth. What looks like an inconsistent or scatterbrained memory to the outside world is actually extreme mental efficiency. Your advanced brain flat out refuses to waste its precious cognitive bandwidth holding on to meaningless noise, surface-level labels, or mundane physical tracking when it is incredibly busy mastering complex systems and understanding deep human behaviors. Honestly, it's a feature, not a bug. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. If your brain is constantly filtering out the meaningless noise of the world, tossing out arbitrary names and ignoring misplaced keys, what brilliant insight is it making room for next? Trust your mind's unique wiring, embrace your deep processing, and start viewing your selective memory not as a flaw, but as your absolute greatest strength. Keep learning, keep focusing on what matters, and we'll see you in the next explainer.